Hello, is it recording yet? Okay, when I taught this first class with first period on the Monday after Thanksgiving break, a lot of them had forgotten all the ways to factor. So here's a quick video to remind you. You need to go back and reference this as much as you can every time you want to study factoring. So there's 5 basic ways to factor. Greatest common factor. There's a magic X with the simple version, magic X if A is greater than 1. And then there's a simple pattern of difference of 2 squares, and there's factoring by grouping. So for a GCF, you're looking for what is the common factor between each term. Here's an x squared. When I factor out an x squared divided into that gives me x squared divided into that gives me the -1. Let's look over here. The GCF of the numbers is 4. The GCF of the variables is x. It's always the lowest common variable. When I divide a 4x out of each term, you just divide it into each term, you get 6x squared minus 2x minus 2. The good thing about GCF is you can always redistribute. 4x times 6x squared is 24x cubed. You can always check your work. Now the magic X simple, basically you're looking for 2 factors. When you drop the -3 here, the -10 there, you're looking for 2 numbers that add up to the top but multiply to the bottom. It's always perfect. The integers always work perfectly. You got to make sure all the signs always match. And there's 2 examples. You can look at it right there. Now the magic X with A greater than 1 is the same type of pattern, but this number down here is always A times C. That's 12. 3 times 20 is 60. You drop the middle term there, and then you're looking again for 2 numbers here that add up to this but multiply to that. Same thing here, 2 numbers that add up to this but multiply to that. But the added extra step is you have to divide by the leading coefficient. See, dividing by 2 there, dividing by 3 there. And then if you can reduce the fraction, both these versions you can, you reduce the fraction down to make the numbers actually work and write your binomials, x plus 2, 2x plus 3, x minus 5, and 3x minus 4. Okay. Here's difference of 2 squares. It's a simple pattern you've got to memorize. If you have 2 terms, they're being subtracted, and both terms are perfect squares, you take the square root of each term in 2 binomials and just say plus and minus. See, the square root of 49 is 7. The square root of x squared is x. The square root of 81 is 9. 7x plus 9, 7x minus 9. Got to remember that pattern. Lastly, factoring by grouping is a combination of those 2. You're going to split up, find a GCF of each half. The GCF of these 2 is x squared. What's left over? Well, an x minus 2. And when you do that to the second half, the binomial that's left over after you factor out the GCF has to be the same. And when you do that, you get this. There's 2 terms there, 2 terms being multiplied plus 2 terms being multiplied. The common factor is the binomial x minus 2. That's your greatest common factor. What's left over? X squared and plus 4. And that's how you factor by grouping. Same example over here. You can look at the examples, but sometimes the binomial x squared minus 36 is again going to be another dots that allows you to factor it further, and this would be easy to graph. Okay, so that's your review for factoring.